Tasmanian Fire Service is actually the operational arm of the State Fire Commission. The State Fire Commission is a body of people, or a board if you like, that consists of myself as Chief Officer, as Chair of the State Fire Commission, and it has representation from the employee groups, so the union and the associations representing the volunteers, and also from local government, where there are 2 representatives, and also from Treasury. The State Fire Commission is basically the key governance body of the Tasmanian Fire Service and sets the priorities and policies and sets the corporate plan for the organisation. Beyond that, in an operational sense, the Tasmanian Fire Service also has key and important relationships with other bodies. There are a variety of memorandums of understanding that we have with the other emergency service providers, so that includes police, Tasmanian Ambulance Service and the State Emergency Service, and interoperability between those organisations and the relationship between those organisations is very strong, and for operational reasons it needs to be. But we also have key relationships with the land management agencies. Fire knows no boundaries, and as fire moves, it moves off private property, which is the responsibility of Tasmania Fire Service, and through state forest, which is the responsibility of Forestry Tasmania, and of course to national parks, which is the responsibility of the Parks and Wildlife Service. And in order to have fires managed best, wildfires managed best, we need to have key relationships with those organisations, and we share such things as our operational management system. So it is not unusual in this state, where a fire is multi-tenure in nature, that are managed by an incident management team that's comprising of all those organisations, and perhaps even at times from private forestry organisations. That is a model that's relatively unique in the Australian context, and I know that in other states there's a lot of work being done at present to improve the relationships and their interoperability across land management agencies, and they're looking at the model that we've developed here in Tasmania as a model for those agencies in going forward. I mentioned before that the State Fire Commission involves local government representatives, and at that level, and at a variety of other levels, we're engaging with local government, who in turn engage with their planning people to ensure that we've got some buy-in and some arrangements that are consistent in as many ways possible as we can across the state in regard to planning. So such things that we might assist with and provide advice with to local government planners might be in the area of fuel mitigation or hazard abatement, for example. Hazard abatement in this state is primarily controlled under local government legislation, and in most cases local government officers issue the abatement notices and will assist in providing the advice in regard to fuel mitigation on private properties. There are of course some cases where there'll be dispute about the amount of fuel and how to handle the hazard, and that's where Tasmania Fire Service's relationship with local government can assist local government in providing some kind of expertise to help in those issues where there might be some debate about the need for fuel mitigation and how it should be carried out and where it should be carried out as examples. There are also a lower level group in the fire management area committees, and fire service, land management agencies and certainly local government are again associated with those groups. And those groups are looking at local areas and assessing risk and more importantly organising mitigation strategies that might in some cases be shared across several different agencies as to how we deal with the threat that might be posed on a local area. And that may not be all mitigation. Some parts of it might be dealt with through community consultation and education as examples. So local government and the planning community is an important part of our operations on a day-to-day basis. Leading on from the recommendations of the Bushfire Royal Commission, there are a variety of recommendations expected that will have some things to do with things like local government planning, building regulation, building design, building codes going forward. And naturally, these will impact on the planning community, but need to have input from fire services so that there's relevance about what's being needed into the future. there have been some fairly emotive approaches about such things as building construction and even bunkers, but these things need to be carefully considered and handled in a consistent way across the country, so that we get people having strategies for their own protection that are going to be effective and not just meeting some regulatory control that may not be fully researched and the best approach. Another body developed under the Fire Service Act here in Tasmania is the State Fire Management Council. The State Fire Management Council is independently chaired. The chair reports to the Minister, and the representation on that group is the Fire Service itself, the government land management agencies in Forestry Tasmania, the Parks and Wildlife Service, the private forest representative body, that's the Forest Industries Association of Tasmania, and the Tasmania Farmers and Graziers Association. The key purpose for that group is to develop a state vegetation fire management policy, and that fire management policy provides the framework for all fire hazard and bushfire mitigation policies that fall under it. I think what will be important for you is ensuring that the strategy that we're asking for you to develop can be implemented on the ground. So I think it's important to keep in mind while developing high-level strategy that it's got to be practical and have relevance and make a difference on the ground. So I ask you in your work as you go forward to make sure that that's kept in mind. So we're developing solutions that can apply to people that want to live in Mount Nelson, and in fact other places too, that will be realistic, achievable, and will have the desired effect into the future. Now that will necessarily be managed by what's being done at the higher level in a strategic sense, but keep that relevance in mind as you progress your work. The Royal Commission has come out with many recommendations last year in its interim report, and its final report is due in July of this year. There will be many recommendations, no doubt, and some of them will lead to the key leadership and governance issues of fire organisations and in fact states on days such as the 7th of February 2009, where the fires had such a significant impact on one single state. The potential lies there that several other states could have something as significant, and certainly Tasmania is not alone in that regard as well. The issue of who's in charge under such days is something that the Royal Commission has looked at, and is something we need to reflect on in Tasmania to ensure that our key leadership decisions and advice and guidance can be provided, and it's known where that information is going to come from. So that's one of the issues that we'll be looking at here in Tasmania, to ensure that there's clarity about where such information comes from and who's got the leadership, who's got the say, and who's going to provide the direction for the community and government on such days.